Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is Will Carey. Happy New Year, and I appreciate you for being here. We're coming up on 1 year of me doing Between Awesome and Disaster. So if you've been here, or even if you're just listening now, thank you. I've gotten a lot personally from doing this podcast. I've had some really good conversations with a lot of really great, interesting people, and the show's been downloaded in like 17 different countries. So just the idea that I'm reaching some people in countries I haven't been to yet is really incredible. So I appreciate you guys being here. I hope you're having a good New Year. I hope that you, if you have goals this year, I hope that you're going to do it, because that's what I'm trying to do also. On the show this week, my friend, comedian Chris Calogero, very thoughtful, sensitive, interesting dude. And we had the kind of conversation that you don't hear the kind of conversation that I don't think happens very often, where it's kind of an open, free exchange of feeling. It was really good to get to talk to Chris, and we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. When you get into this interview, we're discussing a recent Boston College, University of North Dakota hockey game, and that I went to back in December at Madison Square Garden, and we'll get right into it. If you're interested in following any of my social media, I'm on Twitter at Comic Will Carey. You can also check my website, willcareyisfunny.com. And of course, if you are listening to this on iTunes, any ratings or reviews would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for listening. I'm glad you're here. And let's talk to Chris Calogero. I recently, with my girlfriend and her whole family, her dad's a big Boston College fan, Boston College hockey. Yeah. And we went to the Garden to see them play the North Dakota Fighting Hawks.
Oh, really?
Which, and I don't know if you know the thing about their name or not.
The Fighting Sioux.
The Fighting Sioux, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I had a Fighting Sioux hat because I thought that was so cool back in the day. But yeah, there was a fight to change that thing, right?
Yeah, and because the NCAA was basically, we got to kind of kill it with these Native American names. Yeah. And they were like, well, we're not going to change it. And they were like, well, you cannot change it, but then you're not playing in any tournaments. And like, well, we made a law that we can't change it. And they're like, well, you still got to change it.
Yeah.
But the thing with that is, and maybe this is kind of a realization I had, because there's the whole controversy about the Redskins name.
Right.
And they can change the name, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal to a lot of people, because I think they could still just call them the Redskins or the Sioux, because the entire Madison Square Gardens was still chanting Sioux and doing the tomahawk chop thing. Right, I think they got from Florida State.
Yeah, like you're not gonna obviously you can't legislate out how people are gonna react to anything. Mm-hmm. But you can like the least you can do is the thing where you make them change their name.
Yeah,
and I think it's just it's completely irresponsible to me that the Redskins still exist.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I think it's outrageous
that they're still called that.
That they're called the Redskins. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's nuts.
I know, right? And it seems like, and I get that maybe you've been a fan and have called them that for your entire life, and it means a lot to that. I think you could still cheer for them if they were called something else.
Yeah, it's not going to change.
You could come up with a bitchin' logo and come up with a new chant or something.
You just call them like the Washington Warriors, and then it's over.
Yeah, like the Wizards were once the Bullets.
Right, and that's a crazier change to me.
Yeah,
like that they were like, we can't be called Bullets is sort of insane. Mm-hmm. Like I know that there was a lot of gang violence going on, and that's one of the reasons that they changed it. But the idea of the Bullets being changed, but the Redskins not.
It's
and I know
kind of odd.
The NFL is more popular, but that's crazy.
Yeah, but and the way maybe to spin that is, think about how much money, if you've got like a lot of the if they change the name, you've got a whole bunch of old Redskins merchandise.
Yeah.
Think about how much money you could probably make from that, from the certain crowd who's going to cling to that name.
Right. Also, that like, have you read that they lost their trademark?
I remember hearing about
I mean,
that.
I think it's still in dispute, but I think it's close to being settled. And once they lose their trademark, anybody can make Washington Redskins gear. So like it devalues the name and the logo and everything like immensely. So I think once that happens,
they'll think about switching it. So
they'll have to, because you and I could start a Washington Redskins shirt business without any repercussions if they lose their trademark. Basically.
Crazy.
One of my favorite things though is that like there are people who are gambling on what the new name will be.
Oh yeah, that's being bet on.
Well, they're buying domains. So they're buying like Washington Warriors
or the Generals. I've heard that.
Yeah, so like but people own these
domain names. Yeah.
So once they change, like Washington will have to pay them tons of money to grab the website from them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love that.
That's crazy. That's almost like that's like betting on futures almost.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that. Like I went to a John Hodgman thing at the Bell House, and some people from this podcast were talking about betting on futures on the outcome of the election.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that was a world that existed.
That it's so hard for me to wrap my brain around that idea of futures. Like putting stock in something as simple as like in Trading Places, the whole movie is like about orange juice futures. And I just don't.
Yeah,
I can't figure it out.
Me neither. I have no concept of how money is made other than you do a job and then they give you money for it.
Right.
I do think it would be hilarious if we started a Washington Redskins business, because as two people who I think, and I'm putting you in this category, trying to be the smallest part of the problem possible.
Right.
I think it'd be hilarious if we just make tons of money in like selling merch that's offensive.
That's the most offensive. I mean, it is nuts. Again, like to go back to it, I mean, it would be like, I think that somebody had this, it might have been, it was a sports guy. I can't remember who it was. But he wore a like New York Jews shirt or something. And it was like, this is like the point of like how crazy this is. That, I mean, Jews isn't even an offensive term, but just the idea that you would name it.
Yeah. Or I think someone had the Caucasians.
Caucasians, that was it.
The Indians, yeah.
The Cleveland Caucasians or something. And that's not even offensive, and people like lost their minds.
Yeah.
Over the idea that he would get caught wearing that on camera. But I mean, the worst end of that is a slur. That's a slur.
Yes.
So like, think of like that taken to the other extremes it would be taken to, and also you factor in the fact that the Washington Redskins owner, the original owner, was like a virulent racist.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's just,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that
makes sense though.
Yeah, the history is there. Change it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
be cool.
Exactly. The fight is about just be cool. Yeah, you've had it for a long time or whatever, but you could still make money as a football team, because football fans I think sports fans they'll go regardless because they love it. Like the poor fans of because soccer's the big sport I follow, where not a ton of naming controversy. Most soccer teams you can just name whatever city you're in and then just add FC or United to the end of it.
Right.
They'll you stick on hardcore fans. They'll just hang on even through the terrible times. Like Aston Villa, last season had one of the worst years ever and got relegated for the first time in 20 years. And yeah, fans are angry, but they're still going.
Right. It's so funny to me to think of like a fan saying, "I'm not going to go because you changed my pretty patterns that I like so much that I like to spend money on."
Yeah.
But they won't. But they'll still support a team when the ownership has repeatedly fucked up their roster, their coaches, their talent, their development, their money situation, the amount they charge for a beer. Everybody will still go, and nobody really raises a stink about it too much. about like their bad hiring practices or their bad drafting or their bad scouting, but they're like, no, don't change my name though. That's like the final. It's like, well, now you'll tolerate shit product on the field, but you still want to be able to say that you still want to fight some PC war that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's a real pick your battles kind of moment. Like you could, of all the things to hang your hat on, you're gonna put a lot of energy into something that ultimately is not going to affect your routine even.
Right.
The schedule will be the same.
I feel like so many sports fans like die on the wrong hills of that stuff. Like the Cleveland Indians. I mean, this is another thing where it's like Indians isn't like the worst name, but the way it's dressed up with the Chief Wahoo logo, and 60-year-old Midwestern white guys wearing full headdress to games. It's
right. It's just all the stuff around, all the stuff that it brings.
Right. So obtuse that it makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can't see why that's offensive. And I hate that the word offensive has become this buzzword now.
Yeah. It's become, and I hate to say this word too, it's become a trigger word for a lot of people.
Become a trigger word for people who like to say, who believe in the idea that trigger words are bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a reverse trigger.
It triggers the triggerers.
Yeah,
like
it's basically a trigger where you have your thumb on it and you're shooting yourself.
Yeah, I hate the backlash against the idea that you're supposed to just take whatever comes out of anybody's face and just sit there and take it because you're not allowed to complain anymore.
Yeah, and the people who say you're not allowed to complain anymore end up complaining the most.
The most.
Yeah, like I can't. I'm genuinely befuddled. Like part of me wants to think that the reason that these stupid arguments happen so often is because, excuse me, I thought I had to sneeze.
No worries.
Like the same way that if you're at your job and you're looking at something that would take forever to accomplish versus something small that you could focus on quickly and get done or interact with quickly. I wonder if it's like that. It's like, oh man, fixing these big cultural shifts is going to take like a generation.
Right. I think it's hard. I think it's hard for people to I think it is a struggle to get people to fight battles for results that they're not potentially going to reap benefits for or see. But you can always go on Twitter and call somebody a baby or a PC or a social justice warrior or whatever slur thing you call sensitive people,
right?
Who are there to like keep their minds open. It's easier to do that than like you do have to fight for rights. If like fighting for helping the cause of gay rights is not beneficial to me in any immediate way in my life,
right?
Aside from seeing my friend's happiness, which is sort of a tangential thing, or like an intangible kind of thing.
It's an idea, at least, that I think a rational person could go, oh, that's something I can get behind, even if it doesn't affect me personally.
Right.
It will benefit a great number of people, and how could that not be good?
Exactly. And then there's people who are like, well, why are you fighting a battle that's not yours? And then the idea that you only do that to score points with, it's the most cynical take, I think. And I think there are, especially with women, like guys who white knight women and that whole thing. And I'm sure that does happen. People take stands because they want to get laid or whatever. But it's just a cynical idea to me that anybody who steps out on a ledge for any right or a moment or movement or defends a race that's not their own or gender that's not their own is scoring some intangible points that they can then cash in for whatever prize that they think they're going to get.
Right. Exactly. Because that, yeah, again, it's a very kind of this idea that even if you're doing good things, you're doing it for selfish reasons.
Right.
Well, but if you're doing good, if your selfishness brings you to support like a good cause, then that's the best form of selfishness. Right.
And I do think like intent matters. I think that for sure, like your intent needs to be in the right place. But yeah, like if I buy a sandwich for a homeless person, of course, that makes me feel good in some way as like a member of society or whatever endorphin that releases, or like I'm good or I feel good. But as long as the balance is I helped a person out is the tips the scale on that side the most, then you're fine. I feel like. I think there are cynical people who do charity and give things very cynically and they want stuff from it. I think,
right.
You know, whatever Donald Trump says he gives to charity and he wants people to believe that's part of his persona, and he's a cynical,
it's
bad
calculated.
person. It's a calculated thing, but I don't think you can't just lump everybody into that boat of doing something to get something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's too many. It's not easily categorized. Human behavior and human nature isn't easily categorized, and a lot of people wish that it was.
Sure.
And that's why it's complicated. Like I try to have this thought also about like people who maybe voted for Trump but weren't doing it for reasons of they were on board for like the the racism or the anti-immigrant sentiment or any of this. Like maybe they saw, like, I would love to know what they heard or what they saw that tipped their hand. Like, and I know that's what a lot of people are trying to figure out right now, but
yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to figure out. I mean, I know everybody contains multitudes, and I also don't necessarily think that it's my responsibility to go out, like some people say, and get to know Trump voters at all. You know, like that whole, it's not, they voted for a objectively bad person. And so they did a harmful thing.
Yeah. And not even in like a, cause like, and then we could go down this rabbit hole for hours, I think, but this idea of like, not even just he's on the other side. Cause even now in retrospect, you could probably, and also maybe at the time you could think even if McCain or Romney had become president,
sure.
They probably could have done the job. They probably would have had the best. They probably would have had the same intentions that other presidents have had who have disagreed. They probably weren't doing it for abjectly selfish,
right. And they had political acumen to get
hungry
some things
reason,
done.
power hungry reason. Yes, and they had political acumen. They weren't like they weren't like a pro wrestling heel.
Right. I mean, I'm at the point now where it's like, I'll take Pence. Like I'm definitely okay with that.
Right.
Like he is objectively not my cup of tea.
Right.
He's, you know,
I don't like him. I don't like him either.
I don't like his
ideals.
ideals.
Like he thinks. I don't agree with him.
Yep.
I don't like what he's.
But
does
he's
or
at
what
least
he says.
governed.
Yeah.
Like he's been in a job where he had to govern, and again, still fight him tooth and nail. But I don't feel like I'm gonna wake up to my Twitter feed telling me that the missiles are like inbound.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and the 3 minutes, and the quick, and that hashtag goodbye humanity.
Yeah.
Did you know that I saw this on John Oliver a couple months ago. Ted Turner has it set when the world ends.
Well, I love that. I love this story.
For a military band to play "Nearer My God to Thee," which is one of the hymns that was played as the Titanic was sinking.
I think you can find that tape. I think it's available.
It is.
Right.
I think it's online.
They're just in case the world ends tape. Mm-hmm. That stuff is like, that's so.
Do you ever think about stuff like that? Do you think about the possibility of the abject end of the world? Like, the idea of like a post society world, like a Walking Dead or a Mad Max kind of world.
I mean, I definitely grew up a child of the 80s.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey.
Nice.
Jersey City, and then a town called Mendham, which is like right by Morristown, like the burbs, North Jersey.
Okay.
But I definitely grew up like, you know, I'm like a kind of like that early millennial, I guess. Where
How old are you?
I'm 34.
You're 34. Okay.
So I mean,
30.
millennial is like categorized as like being born in 1980, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're like right on the cusp. I'm 30, so I think that puts me kind of towards the middle of it.
Yeah, I'm like on this like weird early end of it, where they're like, we're like Generation Y, and then
you're Millennial Y.
right. So my movies were like Terminator 2, then I got really into all those things and Mad Max and Warrior. So I've always thought about it and I'm like, that seems like a lot of work. I don't know if I want to like survive to then have to scrap out a living at the end of the world.
I know exactly, right? Like the job of survival after the world ends and the challenges that come with it.
So much work.
I know, right? Like just like basically like it's like camping every day for the rest of forever.
Yeah. Also, like you have to, you all right. So you definitely get used to luxuries in the world. Like there's no doubt about it. And I'm talking like if you've ever been accidentally bumped up to first class, which I never have.
Hasn't happened yet, but every time I walk by those first class seats, I
want it.
I think how great it would be.
But even stuff as simple as like working on a movie set and like having everything, all the food there, or I'm trying to think. I had a better example recently, but it's very hard to downgrade.
Yes.
Once you get used to certain things. And then if you're talking about going back to the very beginning of society, I mean, I'm not going to be able to use my phone. I'm going to be so bored. Like, we're all just have to sit there and like talk. It's going to be like, I feel like there's going to be this weird reckoning of like, all right, we got to actually figure out how to like be humans again in this specific way.
Yeah.
And then we'll figure out the shit. But do you know anybody in your life who you think like if they were at the end of the world, like would revert to feralness like immediately?
In our friend group, I can't immediately place anybody. I think we'd all kind of be frightened and hiding in apartments or trying to get out to sea. My dad is definitely someone who I think could be equipped to go back to living off the grid, so to say.
Right.
Because I know he has sort of a kind of a cynical view of how government works and its function. He also has a shit ton of high-powered assault rifles and rifles and pistols and all. So he's prepared for this abject them to come and storm his house. And I know he hunts, and I've had deer that he's shot, and he makes a sweet chili.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Calvert County in southern Maryland. It's right where the Patuxent River and the Chesapeake Bay meet.
Cool.
Like I say, what county I'm from because the towns are like populations of under 800, under 1,000. I usually tell people I'm from Baltimore because people know Baltimore.
Right.
But really small town. So hunting's kind of a part of the culture, and I tried to go hunting with him a couple times. It's too hot or it's too cold, and you got to be quiet.
Did you have the capacity for killing animals?
I never was in that. I never got put into that position.
But were you like, oh man, if conditions were ideal, I would totally do it?
I was never excited about it. I never remember being excited to kill an animal or upset to. I definitely remember having making the connection that, meat comes from certain types of animals.
Sure.
But it never horrified me enough to like want to stop.
Is your dad somebody who, when he hunts, always eats what he hunts?
Yes.
Okay.
He's definitely one of those guys. He has it's funny how these services turn up. He has a guy that he takes the deer to and breaks it down, chops it. So yeah, he's not like he's not a trophy hunter or a sport hunter.
Man, trophy hunting, I think it's weird. I think like hunting is this thing where I know its place in our
culture,
in our society, in a civilization,
At one point, it was how you lived.
Exactly. It was definitely how you lived. I mean, it's so funny. Everybody thinks everybody was just hunting, but we know now that there was plenty of tribes that were living off the land and were basically vegetarians not by choice, but by
just
virtue of where they were.
Yeah, because sometimes if there isn't a game to fight, then grow some corn. Yeah,
you grow corn, or you just move, across the country as the seasons are,
you
changing. But so we used to be a necessity, right? For a lot of people, you had to hunt, and now I feel like if if you hunt for game or trophy, I mean, it is a complete luxury.
Oh yeah.
It's like an ultimate luxury that you get to go out there and just kill an animal and then just not care about anything that happens to it aside from getting it stuffed or put in a room or
right, or getting your picture taken with it. It doesn't sound like it doesn't sound. It's just it's never something that has sounded like fun or appealing to me.
Yeah, like I get the appeal sort of like what your dad does in a way. Like you're gonna use that meat. You're gonna maybe use the canvas or all that stuff. I get like I hunted this. Because there's a satisfaction in cooking a meal that you just buy ingredients for.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I bought this and I put it together and I made it. And here I serve the people that I love the food that I made. It's like a very great ideal. And I get the idea of like adding that extra step of like, I went out and got this.
Exactly. There's a certain like the idea of providing, like the ability to provide for people that you care about is, I think, like an innate instinct. It's
it's communion. It's, you break bread. It's the oldest thing to do to connect with your friends.
Exactly. I feel that, and I wrote about this in my thesis, like the tradition of oral storytelling, which is somewhat related to what we are.
Yeah.
Again, very rooted in that was entertainment, and you broke bread, and that's how a community happens.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, I love having people over and having dinner and making stuff for people. So I can maybe get my brain around the idea of adding the extra step of like hunting the animal. I think it's a little unfair that we have weapons that are scientifically brought to a point to just straight up murder a thing. It's a little unfair.
Right, like the advanced technology, night vision, all the
right.
stuff.
Like we should start breeding some advanced deer.
Yeah.
Just to keep up.
We should get deer that can shoot guns.
Yeah, or like
if the deer can fire back, how exciting!
Like they have like Terminator eyes.
Oh shit! That would be fun.
But that being said, I can get behind that idea. A long-winded way to say that. But the idea of just going out, killing a thing, standing on its head, taking a picture, and then flying away in your private plane is horrifying to me.
Yeah, there are a million other ways that I can spend that money, even though I've heard somewhere that that money does get used for like conservation in some cases.
Oh, what, paying to go hunt?
Yeah, like trophy hunting. Like there are places where they're making it benefit local communities and the environment. Good. So there's like that argument to be made, but if someone were to come to me and is like, Will, you have $300,000 and you need to feel like a man right now.
Yeah,
I can think of a bunch of different things I'd rather do with that money.
I know, but I also like don't ever think I'm going to feel that need to feel like a man. I wanted to, can we go down this
Sure. a little bit? Because I'd love to get into this. Because I've been told, I've been told in conversations I've had with a good friend of mine, she says that we've talked a little bit about like, gender norms and other stuff
Sure.
like that. But this concept of what being a man is in like modern society, I don't want to be that. I don't want to hang out with those dudes that want to do that.
Right. I think it's rooted in old cliches.
Right. The same, like what?
Like we were just talking about like providing and like going out and hunting and doing these things. And these are non-advanced ideas of masculinity that somehow have like pervaded through our culture as masculine ideals. Where in reality a lot of those civilizations, like men went out and hunted and women did everything else, and everybody was like, we got to do our jobs to make this work. It was civilizations like worked together. Like nobody thought that hunting was the more important thing than building, constructing teepees or tents or homes to live in or clothes that would keep you warm, like
or fire.
These important things, or raising the next generation of your family.
Yeah, that stuff is all very important, and it
wasn't put in a hierarchy.
Yeah,
So it's weird to me that that idea of like, go out and hunt and you fucking do this and you come home and you hit your wife and you spill your beans everywhere. Like,
Right.
No, like the only reason they survived was because they were all playing like their part to advance everybody.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's like an ecosystem. There's roles that are being filled.
Yeah.
And if something weakens, the system as a whole grows weaker.
Right.
I'm curious about this because when I think of New Jersey in particularly the 80s and 90s, I immediately think of a bunch of dudes where that is their focus.
Right.
Was Jersey City like that when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, that it was, I always felt really good about having like my nuclear family be very open-minded and thoughtful and sensitive, and took in a lot of good pop culture, movies and books, and like everybody reads in my family, and music. And I guess it was sort of like that. I never really felt like I got jumped when I was like 10 years old for like a starter hat, which was like a big thing to have back then.
Yeah, I had a starter Bulls jacket.
Yeah, me too. That was like my you had to have it.
Had to.
Yeah.
The Bulls in like the 90s.
Oh, had to have it.
Could not have it.
But like I guess the idea of masculinity never felt that pushed on me. Like my grandfather was like a pretty tough dude.
Mm-hmm. What was he like? What was
He was an immigrant from a very undeveloped island off of the coast of Sicily called Filigud.
Okay.
And he's a fisherman. Met my grandma in like Australia when they were both happened to be there. But he had a fish market, and he made his own wine, and he had his own garden, and he kind of did all these things. And you could say he was like, he had calloused hands and did a lot of these things that you would associate with manliness, but
did a lot of physical hard work,
physical labor and hard work. But I never really felt like he was a very loving grandfather. He, had his ideals, and he would kind of get worked up about, he's like a Republican, and he would get worked up about a lot of Democrats in a lot of weird ways. But I never felt like he ever thought I was soft or was like, you got to do this. Like he was always very loving, and he would kind of prod me like lose weight and stuff, but that never felt like you do that because you're a man or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. I never really felt that pressure. I mean, I knew it was there in Jersey City, I guess, but I don't know. I never felt like somebody was always like pushing me to be more masculine or something.
That's important, because that pressure I feel can break some young men.
Yeah, because then you're living up to some weird ideal, and then the thing you're not getting from anybody is like love and encouragement.
Right, and you have like weird overcompensating behavior, and then you try to love somebody later on in your life.
Right. Then you don't know how to deal with women, and then
you don't know how to. Yeah, you don't know. Then
you start getting mad at women, and then it's a waterfall of bullshit.
Yeah, it's a whole spiral. I'm glad that you didn't have to deal with that.
I was gonna say, did you, having a father who goes out and hunts and has guns, and did you feel like a pressure that you had to like live up to something?
I definitely. I don't think he ever really pressured me. He definitely. I remember at least one time him trying to say, "Oh, we could go jogging or something." I definitely gravitated more towards my mom, because she was the more she was the gentler, sweeter one. And even when my mom did get mad at me if I was being a shit or something, like there was a point where like she made me feel better.
Yeah.
My dad made me feel like shit. It was a day-long thing.
Do you have siblings or?
No, it's just me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I got step siblings now, but I don't really know them.
I was gonna say, did you have a good relationship with your dad? Do you have a good relationship with your dad?
It is the topic of my one-man show. So
oh, really?
That might answer some of your question.
Yeah.
I will say my dad and I's relationship was really good when I was a kid. It got really bad the way he left my mom.
Okay.
And I didn't talk to him for probably close to 10 years.
Wow.
And like maybe 4 times a year. It is getting better now, mostly because my girlfriend is pushing me to try to reconcile that. And I also was told some other sides of the story of how my dad ended up leaving in such a shitty way that didn't justify it, but at least provided some context.
Sure, which is very important.
Yeah, which is now the thing I'm wrestling with now is the idea that, you know, good people can do shitty things.
Oh, yeah, it's tough. I think that you see that a lot with, I don't know, I thought, and I know it's like a charge thing. We come back, I'm bringing back to politics, but I feel like that was the crux of Hillary Clinton's campaign. And a flawed candidate who had been around for a while and had done a lot of good things that kind of got swept away because of some of the less than ideal things that she had done.
Yes.
Which then got overblown into big, glaring problems. And I think it happens a lot with politicians. And
I think so.
I think the alt left, as it exists now or whatever.
I've never heard the phrase alt left before.
Right. They're like the purity guys. The purity politics, like Bernie guys. And they won't accept anything less than the perfect candidate. And I think like part of growing up is understanding in life in general that you can like somebody a lot, but also come to recognize that, hey, you did a bad thing and we need to talk about it and reckon with it. And I still like you, I still want a relationship with you, or I want you to run for office, but we need to talk about this thing too. And it can't just be swept away in like a fervor of anger or love.
Exactly. That's what I think I'm at now, because me and my dad can talk about it, but we talk about it in sort of like a negotiation kind of way where it's more like, I think this, I acknowledge that you think that, I don't have anything to say about it.
Yeah.
So we're still kind of like, we haven't like broken down and cried yet, but I know I got to talk to him about it in depth at some point.
Right. But
I talked to my mom about it too.
I think acknowledgement is so huge.
That was a big thing.
Yeah. Because
I think at one point I said I would never forgive him.
Oh, wow.
And that really, I don't remember saying it. I don't remember when I said it, but apparently he and my stepmom remembered I said it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think another thing as you get older is you realize, and this is a lot, thinking about this a lot too, because I'm reading the Bruce Springsteen autobiography.
Oh, I really want to read that.
It's great. And he talks about his dad a lot. And I think the realization you start to make sometimes when you get older is that your parents are people.
Yeah.
Like you could say something to your dad that would hurt his heart. But in your brain, you're like, that's my dad. He doesn't have nuance.
No, exactly. I never saw him as someone with nuance.
Like he doesn't have feelings or that could be hurt by me.
Right. No, yeah, that's a weird realization to have. At this age.
Well, I mean, you're at the age like 30.
It's important to have though.
Yeah, because you struggle sort of through, you're angry when you're a teenager for whatever reason, or however you're going through your teenage years, and then your 20s are just like this weird muddle of ambition. And I mean, some people some people win awards for making the movie La La Land when they're in their 20s. Right. Some people kind of muddle through the darkness of figuring out what the hell's going on in their own brain.
Yeah.
But I think once you start to hit 30, you're kind of like, if you're through it and you're a pretty decent person, you start to then go back in time a little bit and be like, all right, let's parse out some of this other shit that was going on. Exactly.
Yeah. Because you've been humbled a little bit, and you've been, I think, put through the spin cycle on what experience is.
Yeah.
And you're able to kind of view some things differently. Maybe you're not as hard-lined as on some things as you once were.
Right. Like that's the problem I again have with Trump is like I can't find that.
Yeah, he doesn't strike me as a guy who's ever like reflected.
Like I could find that in a lot of politicians I didn't love. Like I read this book called All the Way, I think it's called, or it's like The Way to the White House. It's about the 1988 primaries, the Democratic and Republican primaries, which is George Bush and Michael Dukakis and Bob Dole. And It's great. I can't recommend it enough. It's like 1,000 pages. It's like a very comprehensive look at this primary race, and
All the way.
I can't. I'll look it up for sure.
Okay, thanks.
And let you know. But and it's so fascinating, and it made me really like step back and sort of appreciate Bob Dole and George H.W. Bush in the ways that we're sort of talking about. Where I'm like, I politically like do not fall in line with you almost at all, but I also like know like Bob Dole like talk about his injury and like he got shotgunned like through his shoulder and like his shoulders hanging off, and George H.W. Bush like had one kid die of cancer, and he's like I writes like thank you notes to everybody for everything that he ever does, and it made me just be like, oh yeah, they're people. And Bob Dole also worked on a food stamp act with a Democrat, which seems unheard of at this point.
Right. The idea that Democrats and Republicans could ever come together to work on something.
To work on a government program of entitlement.
Yeah.
Like entitlement reform, basically.
Yeah, right.
Together is bonkers to me. But he did it, and he, talked about how he struggled, and food stamps are so important to people, and they help people live. And I was like, man, this is like, these people are people.
Yeah.
It like elucidated that point for me. And with like I like Trump, like I can't find that. I don't think there will ever be a book that comes out where I go, oh right, like he was a pretty like he had good relationships, or he was trying his best in some regard, and the way he went about it is not the way that I would have recommended.
Right. Yeah, there's no stories like that. There's no stories. There isn't even like the story of there's no story of like, oh, I was in a really bad place and then Donald Trump called me and he made me feel better.
Right.
There's not even that.
Yeah, no, there's nothing that like it sort of reminded me of like when I'm gonna look this up on my Kindle. Oh, what it takes. That's what it's called.
What It Takes.
The book is called What It Takes.
All right,
The Way to the White House. I can't recommend it enough.
Okay, I'm gonna read that.
But even like when Ted Cruz, you remember when Ted Cruz, this is crazy to me, when Ted Cruz was in the primary and he fucked up his only chance at ever being nominated for president. Do you remember his college roommate came out and said that everybody hated Ted Cruz?
Yes, I do remember that.
It's like, I mean, that's at least humanizing to me. I can picture like a young Ted Cruz in a dorm and everybody like hang out in one room, and then little Teddy opens the door and like the whole party stops and they're like, ugh.
This guy. I have a similar story, completely different people. My high school theater teacher, brilliant guy. I learned so much from him. In college, he was roommates freshman year with David Schwimmer, who is apparently exactly like he is on TV. But and he would tell me all these stories about how he would like never clean up, and he would just buy new clothes instead of do laundry. And
that's wild.
And like one time he came in from outside and was like, the snot is frozen inside my head. Like the same way Ross would say it.
Ross is like his dream role.
Yeah. No, it's exactly like him. Even when I saw Band of Brothers, it was just like, oh,
right, he's like the shitty
Ross is
CO,
fighting
right?
in World War II.
Yeah.
Just these like little things of like, oh, you're a human.
Yeah. I love that stuff. I love finding like the little humanity in people, and I think that a lot with athletes. And if you watch pro sports and how we kind of like, we'll just talk about guys so harshly and be like,
I know
that guy sucks. He's a dick. He doesn't care. You come on, you stink. I hate you. Like it's nuts to me. So I love kind of like digging in and finding like they are people, and it doesn't mean you can't take people to task for certain things.
Right.
But I think you have to start getting in the realm of like realistic, constructive criticism.
Absolutely. That's why I will do this a lot when I'm at soccer games. I'm like, I hope you fail in this moment, but not forever.
Yeah. I joke about like athletes and stuff, but I'll go to like a hockey game and just kind of like if the other team does something amazing, I'll be like, well, like there's no way we could have stopped. That was amazing, And it's like people are like, oh, we're here to be cliche.
Exactly. It's like, no,
we don't believe in context.
Yeah, they're kind of fundamentalist about it. What was your relationship with your dad like?
My relationship with my dad is pretty good.
What's he like? What does he do?
My dad's a lawyer.
Lawyer.
was, I believe, the first in his family to go to college, and then put himself through law school. And like I think like a lot of what I think about masculinity is like comes from my dad in a lot of ways.
What kind of law does he practice?
He practices it is insurance law.
Insurance law.
It's like cases that go on for 15 years.
Okay.
But he used to be a assistant DA in the Bronx.
Ooh.
Which is like always pretty hardcore when I think about it.
Yeah.
Because my dad's like a pretty silent guy. Like he's a smart guy, but he's not much of like a he's a thoughtful guy.
He's not what you would imagine as like your typical like TV attorney.
Yeah, not like some slickster or something. But like, you know, he went to school and got married and raised 3 kids and worked his butt off. And I'm like, that's good enough. Is that not like, did he have to go out and get in like a bar fight too or something?
Right. No, again, it goes back to the provider role.
Right.
You've broken bread. You've just done it over tax litigation.
Right. So, yeah, but we have a good relationship. You know, he's kind of,
and he's never one of those like, you know, keep your eye on the ball kind of.
It was always more like you make sure you're okay.
That's a good lesson to get.
Right. Like I don't know that, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I think my parents both kind of like let me figure out my own way, and I had trouble with it. I have like a lot of, and I always have had a lot of motivation problems. It's something I had to work hard to, which is sort of funny, to kind of combat a little bit. Because I think I was just always afraid of failing.
No, yeah, I have that too. My girlfriend's on my ass constantly that I should be working harder than I am. Yeah,
it's hard. It's difficult if you're, and it's funny because like my girlfriend Emily Winter, who you know has been on the show, she is like the hardest worker that I know. So it's, and I've worked hard at comedy. Like when I started comedy, was like, oh, this is the thing that I like.
Right.
This is the thing that I feel good about. I feel that I can do. And because I feel like I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Same here. Comedy and like when I was in acting as well are the only things I've ever really gotten. The performing, like, you know, that whole umbrella are the only things I've ever really cared about. So that's the thing I put all my work in. I'm not really good at faking is something if I'm not into it.
Same. Yeah. I kind of wear that on my face. If I'm not into something.
Yeah. Be like this. I'm not enjoying this.
I try to be a good team player all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I think I had like a lot of trouble. I think I was more into like making sure that I was a very insecure kid. So I think I was always working hard at like securing my social place.
Were you picked on a lot?
Not really. I just was always feeling like I didn't want to be left out of anything. So I was always working hard to secure like the idea of having friends and having those friends like me a lot. And then I think like in high school and in college, as I went along through those 4 years, like my grades start diminishing as I'm having more fun with the social aspect of my life.
Right. Who are you in high school? So so you're a kid of the like 80s and 90s. Terminator's going to happen. Yeah. And are you this? So are you like this sort of like sci-fi comic book like nerdy kind of guy, or?
I think
who did you become in high school?
I think so. Like I moved out of Jersey City when I was 10, which was hard, and then I started making friends again in my new town. From 5th grade to 8th grade, and then my parents wanted me to go to a private school. I think that was like sort of the ideal. My sister had done very well in private school. Yeah. And I was like, well, now I just moved, and like 10 to 14 is like, that feels like an eternity of ages. Yeah. So I was like, I just moved, and then I'm just getting in with these kids, and now I have to go to a different school. Yeah. To start again.
Right.
And so I just was like, I had a really tough time when I was a freshman in high school. Like not feeling good about the school I was going to, not wanting to make friends with these people. Because I was like, I already did this. I'm just like annoyed, I think.
Right. You're like, I don't want to. It's like if you're playing a video game and the power goes out before you can save.
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to play this again.
Yeah, it's like I've been playing this for 4 hours.
Like
I don't want to play the same 4 hours
I
again.
already hit a checkpoint. Like, why'd you take it away from me? So then I
could see
went
that.
to the public school sophomore year through senior year, and a lot of the people I had become friends with earlier were there. So I kind of like slid back in and feel like I really was the right choice. And then I think I became like a floater.
Yeah.
Like I could comfortably go between hanging with, you know, the guys who played basketball and football, and then also some of the more outcasty people, and then also my core group of friends who were people that I watched horror movies with all the time, and talked about comic books with and stuff, and played video games with. So I think I could always like fit in with all those people. I was like a people pleaser.
Right. So you're able to kind of roam amongst all tribes.
Yeah, I never feel like, oh, these people want me here to laugh at me, or these people are doing me a favor. I always felt like, no, I'm like earning this.
Yeah.
You know? And it was still hard, but because it's high school.
Oh, yeah.
But
because everyone's feeling the same way, and it's coming out in different ways. It's manifest.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of insecurity manifests itself. Some people manifests itself as being like some sort of overly tough act.
Yeah.
Sometimes it manifests, like me, it manifests itself in quiet sadness.
It's like leaking out of people's pores, though.
Yeah, and
You
like
know?
everyone's having the worst day every day in their mind.
Yeah. And
Just kind of searching for that thing.
everybody's like growing to their bodies and figuring out how to dress and driving and all these things.
Exactly.
But yeah, I always felt, looking back on it, I'm like, I think that was the right way to go about my high school experience. Was kind of being able to talk to anybody. I think it served me well in comedy.
Oh, I think so. I kind of feel that way now because I have all of these. I'm now at a point where everything I'm interested in, I'm not ashamed of it anymore. So I can roam with I can roam in like the more nerdy circles, or I can roam in the sports circles, or I can roam in this circle. Like,
yeah, no, I agree. I hate the term guilty pleasure. That's like one of my least favorite terms.
Right.
I think you can like what you like. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
I can like listening to Katy Perry music and reading Spider-Man comics and talking about Bob Dole. You know, like I can like and do all those things.
Absolutely. And there's a certain internal piece that comes with being able, like, oh, I can be everything, all of this.
Right. It was, I mean, I know like when you're younger, like it's like tribal of like, you can't.
Right. Because
Like
you're looking
Green
for
Day
your
and
people.
Dave Matthews Band, like you just can't do it, you know?
Right. Oh, the phase I had where I remember being 14, being really into Blink-182, Creed, Eminem, Kid Rock, and ICP. I was like, who am I?
Yeah, that's a lot of things swirling around.
Yeah, I was like, what am I gonna land?
Yeah. You're just like hedging all your bets.
Right. And I was like starting to play guitar. I was like, oh, dude, can I blend Creed and Blink-182?
Could you?
Not at the time. I can't. I'm trying to think if there's like any band right now I've ever heard that is like a hard rock punk band, and I can't think of any, because most modern rock is all just playing back to like they all grew up on like 80s hair metal.
Maybe
so
like Imagine Dragons or something. They're not really punk. They're sort of.
I put them more in like I'd put them closer to being like a rock and roll band. But I saw them live last year. It's a crazy show. It's
they do like a whole production?
Yeah, there's tons of lasers and smoke and lights and stuff. They put on a good show. I want to call them maybe, and I hate using the phrase like new wave or post punk.
Yeah.
But I would put them I would put them in. I only want to say that because I don't want to put them in the same category as bands like Shinedown or Hinder or
right.
like active modern rock radio.
They fit into this weird category of bands that do nothing for me, and I feel like their music was specifically created to be in like a Toyota Camry commercial.
I do not fault you for thinking that because that's how I felt about their music too. I've gone and seen a bunch of what I'm going to call really mainstream popular bands live, and I'm like, oh, okay, you should be doing this. Like when I saw Imagine Dragons, because I never thought really too much about them, but then girlfriend's really into them, and then seeing them live, I'm like, oh, okay, they put on a good show.
Right, it's sort of like the band equivalent of finding out that somebody's a human being.
Exactly.
Right, like you went and saw their thing, and like I would never tell anybody to stop or like get like, people still at our age sometimes get overly
defensive.
You guys got to kill yourselves. It's like that crazy thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to because I was definitely that guy at a certain point. I was really like, that movie is stupid. That entire genre of movies is stupid. You are stupid because you like those movies.
Yeah.
As a result, you should not be allowed to vote.
Right.
I will go and get really stupid with it.
Yeah, and I know like the instinct is to like attack, but I don't know. Like they don't bother me. I don't care.
Yeah. You know what really freed me up to kind of start, and this is why I started like being able to pay attention to sports again. Because for the longest time I was like, no, I am going to be in theater, and sports are for Neanderthal monsters.
Right.
The person, unlikely as it might seem, Doug Stanhope.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He's got a bit on Beer Hall Putsch. It's towards the end where he says, football is stupid, okay?
Yeah.
But it's my stupid.
Yeah. I like that.
And then he goes on to say, maybe you got your stupid's growing apples and selling them at the farmer's market, or it's like, I can't remember the whole bit, but that was really freeing to hear that bit. As I know that might sound really stupid to a lot of people.
No, I think it's smart and good. I think like honestly, like, people have mentioned it plenty of times, I'm sure, but like, fantasy football connects the jocks to the nerds tighter than I think either group realizes. Mm-hmm. I mean, fantasy football's Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's what
essentially it's stats.
Yeah, it's stats, and it's like
at its base, it's stats. Dungeons and Dragons is stats, and sports in America especially are all about stats.
Right, and especially with the fantasy thing, it's like I picked my favorite guys, and I'm going to put their stats against your stats, and then we're going to see who comes out of this clash on top.
Yes.
And the way people research it and talk about it and think about it and do it, it's like, yeah, it's role playing. It's an RPG.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
Exactly. I can't think of any football players right now, but yeah, Messi's just basically a dwarf with like all 10 on his stats.
Right. Like he's like a hyped up, elder, wizard elder, dark elf or something.
Yeah. And Ronaldo's like, I would put Ronaldo as like the arrogant knight who,
like a paladin or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, I mean, like it's so close to that, and I actually really like fantasy football. I know talking about fantasy football is sort of like a faux pas, but and I don't like. I'm not one of those guys who's like on the train like, this is, and I know
you're not freaking out about your fantasy.
It's very annoying. I love playing fantasy football.
Cool, man.
Yeah, and I love the idea that it does kind of like bring a little cross section of. I love board games and I love games and I love all that stuff. So, and I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I love all those things. I like that it kind of brings me into that point where I'm like, oh, like here's my favorite player. He's on my squadron this year.
Exactly. I absolutely, I 100% agree with you on that. And again, anything that's bringing people together is. Can't be hurt
That's
too
great.
much. So I'm curious also, during this whole time, is comedy important to you during those years, or when does comedy come in later? I didn't get really into stand-up until I was 23.
Yeah.
I don't think I started paying attention to it until sophomore year of college. So I'm curious what that was for you. And then
it's funny because I was into stand-up very early, but I started late. I'm just doing air quotes. I was started when I was 25.
Okay.
And as part of the, it's, you know, it fits into the idea of me having no motivation in my life for a little while. But yeah, no, I remember in high school, my best friend Andrew Lang got like the Richard Pryor box set. It was like 9 Richard Pryor CDs, and we would like roll around in his 1990 Toyota Celica and listen to Richard Pryor albums, and then we would listen to Bigger and Blacker. What is that? Yeah, Bigger and Blacker.
That's
the Chris Rock album with No Sex in the Champagne Room on it.
What was that, Bigger and Blacker? Yes, I'm
pretty sure that was Bigger and Blacker. Because then after that was like Never Scared, I think. But Bigger and Blacker was like, we would listen to that a lot, and then there was an FYE in the mall. It was like a Sam Petty store or whatever, and they had a comedy section. They had a pretty good comedy section, and I would pick up like tons of comedy albums. Like Feeling Kind of Patton was a big one. Patton's like first like massive.
Yep.
It's like 30 tracks or something.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, because there was also the unedited like 2-hour version that was like 2:22.
Yeah.
I would listen to that a lot. Excellent. Mitch Hedberg was another big guy for me.
Didn't get Hedberg till recently.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I wasn't into him until recently.
Took you a while. He was one of those guys. I remember initially a friend showed me Dimitri Martin's Comedy Central Presents.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I knew that you could do short. Because to me, stand-up comedy was Bill Cosby, Jeff Foxworthy, long-form storytelling. Yeah. Like kind of long-form conversational stuff.
Sure.
I didn't know you could just say a thought, and then you could then say another thought. And
right. Like the non-edgy personal stuff.
Yeah.
Kinda like, here's my life and family and my wife and kids. And but then, yeah, Dimitri and Hedberg kind of like flipped the script on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was into all those things, and I listened. And then in high school, my senior year, I like did a couple performances for school stuff. That
stand up or
not stand up. It was like sketch stuff.
Okay.
Like we did a fundraiser for prom or something, and it was called like Wednesday Night Live, and everybody did sketches, and I did like a Hans and Franz thing with one of my good buddies that was based on like our gym teachers. And I ate like a rotisserie chicken on stage and like had a Gatorade and then I also did Matt Foley, the Chris Farley character, the motivational speaker, and like jumped off a stage in a box. And then it was kind of like an opening the door for me and also for my peers who were like, oh, you're funny. Like that, we didn't know that. And then I did like a thing in the spring, which was like a fake beauty pageant for men, where I did like a character, and that was great too. And I had a blast there, and people were like, "Oh man, like you did it again!" And that's kind of when I got the itch.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it would be, you know, literally 7 more years until I really did something about it.
What was going on during those 7 years?
Well, I went to college.
Where'd you go?
University of Scranton, and I just got lost in the unreality of college, I think. Where everybody's like, well, it's the real world, but it's like not. It's a very it's heightened version of reality.
It's the real world with training wheels.
Yeah, it's this weird warped version of reality where you're on your own, but not really.
Exactly.
And you have access to alcohol, and nobody's scheduling you. I mean, the idea of scheduling is there. You're supposed to do these things.
Sure.
But there's nobody going, you gotta go. And I think I got lost in like fitting again with like a social scene, and then a lot of drinking.
Right. What were you going to school for?
Communications, but I literally, like, when school ended, I was like, and everybody was like, we have jobs now. I was like, were we supposed to be doing this? like I just had no direction at all.
Right.
But in my head, I was like, oh, I want to do comedy somehow. I thought it was just like unattainable. Somehow I would like to fall into this world and entertain people. That's when I also saw Killing 'Em Softly, Chris Rock, or Dave Chappelle's Killing 'Em Softly.
Yep. Great special.
I bought Bill Hicks' Rant and E Minor, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. You can get paid for being a maniac.
What about Pryor spoke to you? I'm curious because when I started getting into comedy, people are like, "Oh, well, you gotta watch everything Carlin did. You gotta watch everything Pryor did." I knew Cosby already by that point. But Richard Pryor for me, and maybe I didn't pick up on it a lot because I wasn't like with it enough, too sheltered. Whatever. Sure. What I picked up when watching Pryor was just how personal he was. Yeah. Like live on the Sunset Strip when he's like talking.
Was it after he caught fire?
Yeah, that was after he caught fire. When he's talking about catching on fire, or when he's talking about going to Africa and what a cathartic experience
that bit's great.
That was. It's this really like nice, thoughtful moment at the end of a bit that's got a lot of fun, like animal jokes. And that was the first. I had never seen anyone be like that open. Yeah. On stage, and it was kind of free. I'd heard that you're supposed to be open in yourself on stage, but I couldn't do it because I was still like being really deadpan.
It's tricky though. I think like Pryor again. I think Pryor is very personal. Pryor's like, I don't think comics admit enough that like some of that stuff just hasn't aged well. Like Pryor and Carlin and all those things. Like, yes, they are important in the history of comedy, but a lot of the stuff just isn't great anymore. And that's fine. I think there's still value in it, but it also like has a lot of value when you're young. And so that is still funnier, I think, when you're younger than when you are like more of an adult. I think it hasn't aged that well for like the adult mind, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does, but
I'm trying to think of a way of placing it. I'm thinking about like the bits on, because I probably watch live on the Sunset Strip a bunch of times.
Yeah, and I love it.
The ones that stick most out for me are, aside from the Africa story, the bit about hosting at a mafia nightclub.
Yeah.
That to me still stands the test of time. But then I think I know what you mean, like the stuff at the beginning about like about sex.
Yeah.
At the time,
right,
I always have to try to put it in the context at the time. Or another guy that I have a really hard time with is Lenny Bruce.
Lenny Bruce is not funny to me.
I know Lenny Bruce. I have tried to listen to Lenny Bruce, and I've even tried to put it into context to be like, oh, no one was doing was doing this stuff at this time, and I'm like, I'm not laughing.
I'm fine with Lenny Bruce existing on paper. To me, in my mind, like I get it. He was doing a thing. It was important in the industry that I've chosen to, lay my stakes, throw my stakes in the ground in.
Right. But if you were going to spend $45 to buy a ticket,
not going to do it.
Not going to do it for Lenny Bruce.
But like what I was going to say with Pryor is, before I got off like on a little bit of a tangent, like he was so personal. And I think the thing that you forget sometimes, especially when you're young and you're starting out, is you want to do that stuff, but you just don't have anything in place to do that. Like Pryor being personal is built on years of him writing jokes that weren't personal and just getting on stages and getting comfortable on stage to be personal. It's so hard. It's such a hard thing to do that he made look so easy. And I think the beauty of Pryor is that it did feel like you and him were on a back porch with a couple beers and he was just like making you laugh. Like in a conversation, like that's when Pryor's at his best. I feel like he feels like a buddy who's just like cracking you up.
Absolutely.
But that's time tested. That's baptism by fire. I mean, that's to get to the point where you sound natural is years of being like, sound like a fucking crazy person to yourself.
Crazy person or like a robot. It's failing enough where it doesn't hurt anymore. Yeah. It's getting heckled where it doesn't hurt anymore.
Oh, and when you can deal with it too. When you can like get heckled and be like, let's figure this shit out. Which is tough.
Yeah. I feel like the last time, and you were there the last time I got heckled, but like I was not that
was funny.
Yeah. I was just like didn't have the energy.
You literally just said, don't do this.
Because I just didn't have the energy to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally the first day of the year. Like, this is how you want. my year to start in comedy.
Yeah, it's gonna set a tone. Thinking about it now, I should have cracked something about his Russian accent.
Right, but you're also it's delicate. I mean, when somebody starts heckling at the top of the show, it's a delicate ecosystem because you could lay waste to the entire show.
Right, and I always think about that. Like I was up there going, okay, I can't unload on this dude because I don't want to fuck it up.
For full roster of comedians
for all these people that are nice enough to come and do my show.
Yeah, last time I got heckled, I was the last comic on the show, and I sort of like went overboard crazy because the guy was just talking at, like, answering comedians' hypotheticals, and
he was like a living Facebook thread.
Right, he was just going, and he wasn't being like mean; he was just being rude. You know, he was being like, it was like, oh, I'm excited and I'm doing it. And he had done it a few times, and he derailed our friend Ben Wasserman's set very hard. And I was last one. And in my brain, I was like, if he says something during my set, like, it's on, because he's had plenty of opportunities. And he said something, and I literally, I was like, shut the fuck up. Like, I was just like, you shut up. And it was like 5 minutes of me being like, you're bad. Your girlfriend needs to dump you. You're terrible. Like, why are you still with him? Stop saying you're sorry. It's making me angry because you're not really, like, losing my mind. Like, and that, I'm saying it nicely, but like, I was just like, enough. I'm the last comic. I don't have to worry about anybody coming up behind me. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not know this is a bad thing to do at this point in the world?
I know. And a lot of times they don't. Like, there's so many, and I might want to get into this a little bit because I love talking shop. I think it and this has been going on for a while too, so I'm not going to I'm not pinning any, I don't have the experience to pin it on anything specific, but the heckler, I genuinely hecklers that think that they're helping the show. Like, there are people, so weird. There are people that think that if they didn't, like, bother you, that you weren't going to know what to say next.
Right. It's so weird. And I guess it's a weird testament to, like, in a way, how they've fully committed to the idea of behind any show existing at all of comedy. That, like, oh man, they're just going, they're just talking, they need some help or some prompts or something. But
right. Because the trick is to make it sound like it's all coming up off the top of
your head. Yeah, that's the idea.
Whereas like, you know, I feel like there's more comedy savvy audiences now that get the idea of what an act is, or what a bit is.
Yeah.
But there are some people that think that having to be spontaneous and to shut someone up is where the real art is, and I'm just like, no.
Right. Well, some people want that. Some people like want the heckler experience. They want to see the person do the thing. I mean, I was at a show. I did a Cobra Club Friday night show, live from outer space.
Oh, Bergstrom's thing?
Yeah, I think Amber Nelson was running it. Maybe Bergstrom's back. But yeah, that show. And I went up, and as soon as I got on stage, a guy and a girl walked in. She sat in the front row, and I was like, oh, you know, like, being very welcoming. And then she was doing it, and we had to have a thing. Literally I was the only comic that they were in the room for. Everybody else got a heckler free set, and I had this just aberration of a set where, like, I was like, now I got to deal with you. We're doing it. We're talking. And when I got off stage, you know, it was just work. I just was babysitting and dealing with it, going back and forth. A comic, Taylor Clark, I believe, said, yeah, when they walked in, they just, like, looked at you, and they could have been any comic. They're like, the girl was like, oh, I'm going to heckle the shit out of this guy. Like, that was her intention from the beginning.
Yeah. What goes wrong in your life where that's your first thought? Right.
And then they left, like, left during my set. I was like, yeah, just leave, like, get out of here. Yeah. And then they were just, like, at the bar, and I was like, cash into my drink ticket, and they were just there, and I was like, why would you stay here? Like, what's the thought process?
I have no idea. The only thing that makes sense to me is if they have some kind of bad retail or service industry job where they get shit on all day, so they're just trying to look for someone they can shit on. So
right, maybe.
They think comedians.
But it's also just weird to me, too, when it's like generally is just one person in a couple, and then that couple, their significant other just stands by them.
Yeah.
And I like relationships are more like nobody's gonna really dump a heckler, I guess,
right?
Like there, but I'm like, is that okay? Are you guys okay? This person just like sort of ruined your night in a weird way.
Exactly. What's going on outside of this room?
That you're okay with that happening?
Yeah, or like you excuse in some way.
It's so bizarre.
It is. I also wonder because there's this prevalence of and I know a lot of people have opinions on the whole like heckler owned genre.
Sure
on YouTube. Like there's this idea of like seeing an asshole get owned immediately.
Yeah.
It's just I wish that stand-up was understood or thought of in a way where it was thought of like a theater piece.
Yeah, I mean,
the same way you think of like this. I like doing one-man shows because there's an idea of, okay, this person has a show,
right?
They've worked on it, and I want to see the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you work towards, right? Is like getting people at your shows who are buying a ticket not for some comedy show, but for Will Carey or Chris Calogero.
Yeah,
like you want to get to the idea where somebody is purchasing your name as their night out, and then that's an audience that's going to give you the leeway to do the things that you want to do. And that's like, I feel like that's what the work goes towards. And even then, you're going to have some outliers and shit. But
yeah,
I think the best audiences that you get in front of are like, go ahead. Like I'm sure you've had those shows where you get up and the audience is just sitting back on, just give me all your jokes. I want to hear them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's like easy to get their laughs, but they're like, I will give them up for you, and nobody will bother you.
Yeah, and when those moments happen, they make up for however many bad nights you had or in different open mic sets.
Because hecklers suck, but it's not, it's a rare occasion generally to get like a really bad heckler.
Yeah.
And I'll give a person a benefit of the doubt. Sometimes somebody gets overexcited and says something out loud, or they thought they were being quiet. And so many times people are like, oh, sorry. And they just like, they quiet up.
Yeah, and you could pick up on the tone almost immediately. The worst heckler experience I ever had wasn't even my heckler.
Oh, really?
It was, and it's on YouTube. I used to be the door guy at the Laughing Devil.
Oh, all right.
And Rich Voss was headlining, and there was some dude.
Oh, I think I saw this.
You might have. There's some dude who just was being like a toxic jerk, and I was kicking him out, and he tried to fight some dudes, and I was pulling him back, and he grabbed my shirt, pushed me, and it was frightening.
Yeah,
because I mean, in the time, because I'm not confrontational. I don't like confrontation at all. But I was with it enough to go, okay, he's much older than me. If I hit him first, that's probably going to be an issue. So I'm just gonna stand here and wait for this situation to escalate or resolve itself.
Yeah, that sucks, but it's necessary.
Yeah, I was afraid to do that. Job after a while.
Sure, I mean it's rare, but when you get put in a position of having to deal with that, it's hard. I mean, it's tough. You're being asked to escort a person who's older than you, like out of a club.
Yeah, and here's where my priorities are. After Voss got off stage, my first thing I said to him was, "I'm sorry that your set got interrupted."
Yeah, it's such a.
And then he was just like, "I'm glad you didn't get. I'm just glad you didn't get hurt."
Yeah, it's such a funny instinct.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the show.
Right. Everybody's like, no, just be cool, dude. Like, be okay. And then we can figure out the dumb show.
Yeah, we'll figure it out later. Everyone got free tickets.
Of course. Nice. That's good.
Yeah. So after those 7 years, when does stand up kick in for you? Do you start in Scranton or do you?
No. So I leave. I graduate. I don't know what to do. I work at like a bank in my hometown. I live with my parents. And then I also like really love movies. So I was like, let me get into production. Maybe like, and in the back of my brain, I was like, oh, this might be like a side entrance into entertainment. So I was a production assistant on Law & Order SVU in the office.
Nice. And
there was and all this while I'm like, I want to stand up. I'll try. I'd done on UCB classes at like 2006 or something, and there's a guy at SVU who's like doing stand up comedy, and I'm kind of like, oh, how are you doing it? How's it? How do you do that? Where do you go? and he sends me to gigglechick.com. I don't know if you ever remember that site.
I remember Giggle Chick.
They used to like list open mics.
Yeah.
And I found an open mic, and I went down to the Comedy Village, which was on West 3rd between Thompson and Sullivan. And if you ever listen to like old Mark Maron episodes, old timers will mention the Boston Comedy Club.
Yes.
The Boston became the Comedy Village. So it's the same club.
Oh, yeah.
Before it closed forever.
Yeah, it's Zinc Bar now, I think.
Yeah, it's like a wine
Some
bar.
wine bar, yeah.
Yeah. So I went down there and I did like a sporadic group of open mics, like 3 over the course of like late winter to late summer. And then I moved to Hoboken. I moved out of my parents' place. I'd saved a bunch of money from working, moved out, and then went to the Comedy Village again, and then started doing mics, and then that's when I never stopped.
And what year was that?
2007.
2007.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's about this. That's the same year I started.
Yeah.
So coming up on 10 years this year.
I can't believe it. Yeah.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yep. Where did you start in New York or in Maryland?
I started in Maryland at a Damon's Bar and Grill. It's a chain restaurant.
Yeah, you gotta start comedy at a bar and grill
in Hunt Valley. It was, and the show was on Sunday, and if the Ravens were playing, they wouldn't turn the TV off.
Oh, a nightmare situation.
I would just perform while people were trying to watch a football game.
Nobody hates you more than if you're trying to do comedy over a sporting event that the people are very interested in.
Yeah, I also did a couple shows right after the Super Bowl.
Oof. Yeah, I'm
gonna do, and my show, my next, you can use that's on the Super Bowl this year. So
oh, really?
We'll see how.
That's tough. I've been on stage while the Yankees were getting eliminated from the playoffs. I was on stage during the opening games of Monday Night Football one season, the opening week of Monday Night Football. I tried to do comedy at halftime between a Lakers and Celtics game 7 at a bar. And I get it. People go to bars and like they want to see the game. They don't know that comedy's going to be there. I mean, I think a lot of comedians act like, oh, how does nobody want to see us? And I'm like, it's Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett in Game 7 of an all-time NBA. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah, your jokes about pot and masturbation will just have to wait.
They have to wait. It's just the sports thing, and then football especially. Like,
oh my God,
people just are not going to care.
Yeah, it's like trying to do stand up in the middle of mass.
Yeah, that's really funny.
You just walk up and there's like, oh, it's like, by the way.
Yeah, it's so vulnerable too, in so many
Twitter,
ways.
am I right? So vulnerable, and it's just like that feeling of like, I know, I know you don't want me here, but I got to get through this.
But it's also bad to apologize, and then people really don't want to see you. They don't want to see some weak-willed, unfunny idiot,
Exactly. The idea you go up, you kill at a funeral that's happening during the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Then you're a real comedian.
The dream. That's the dream.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I know we've talked a little bit about this too. This might be a good button to put it in. The idea of comedians having to suffer to prove that they're really comedians.
Oh,
because we've talked about how I know you're not that interested in clubs necessarily.
Yeah.
But I still have this part of me that says if I'm really a comedian if I perform at something it's called a comedy club.
Right. I mean,
for people that hate me.
Right. I get it. I just I do find it a little unappealing, but I also understand I'm not going to turn down a spot at a place, but I think there's a big difference between suffering for your art and paying your dues. And I don't think that the Venn diagram completely covers one another over. I don't think the circles are completely overlapping. I mean, there is some overlap of yes, I've played a frozen yogurt shop. That's going to happen. I've played Monday Night Football, and I was so far, the stage was just the door, and I felt people brush up behind me, which is a very disconcerting feeling while you're doing comedy, is to feel bodies behind you.
Yeah.
But I also think it doesn't have to be suffering. It doesn't. Also, just because you suffer doesn't mean anybody owes you anything.
Yes.
So if I just say like, well, I had 3 years of terrible garbage shows, so now do I get my thing? And it's like, no, I don't. I wasn't at those shows. Like, I don't. Just because you had bad times doesn't. I don't care. Nobody's gonna give you something just because of the bad times. Like, you have to exert your good work on those bad times. You know, you have to wrangle them into something that is learnable.
Mm-hmm. Something that translates, and this is what I've been trying to think about more, is also accepting the fact that I'm at a place, I've been doing this for almost 10 years. I'm at a place where I should try to get a good tape, and I should try to submit to more festivals. I should try to submit to college agencies.
Yeah, it's hard.
I should try to do jobs that get gigs that pay.
Yeah.
I should just that whole nagging insecurity, and then not being asked for anything. I try to remember you got to claw. You have to claw for some of this for this.
Yeah, I think it's like a mix of like, you got to claw, you got to ask, you got to put yourself out there, you got to believe in yourself, you got to not be afraid of success. And you also need to understand nobody owes you anything. People aren't going to come knocking on your door if you're not around. And you also just have to be like undeniably good at what you're doing. You know, you have to make sure that people see that.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird cocktail of things that you got to always like are keeping up on. You're like, am I out there enough? All right. Are my jokes getting good enough? Like, are my new things getting good enough? Or are new people seeing me and being like, I want that guy on my show? So it's like, it's a weird sludge of things that you need to do just to, you know how Louis has a joke about, he's like, oh, I work out just to have this body.
Yeah, it's like I run 3 miles every day just to
look like shit.
Just to look like shit. Yeah,
like the kind of shit that I want to look like, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think like with comedy, sometimes you have to do like a lot of hard work just to maintain the things are okay.
Exactly.
You know.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, absolutely.
It's hard, but it's like it's frustrating because you want recognition, and I think comedy's so hard to get recognition in, and so hard to know when you're getting better. It's like growing taller. Like, you don't feel it.
Right. It's just you notice it. It's slowly you notice it happening.
Right.
And the other thing I try to do is so I feel like a lot of people in modern society are yearning for control. I have this whole theory about why Starbucks is popular, because they give you control. Yeah. You can pretty much any crazy dumbass idea you think of, they'll do it.
Yeah.
I know because I used to work there.
Yeah, that's funny. I like that. Chipotle too.
Yeah. Like,
I want that. I want that. I want that. I want that. I want that.
Exactly. Like, the food is secondary to being able to hear yes.
Yeah. That's really funny. I like that.
So when I've been trying to apply the same thing to my comedy career is, what can I control? I can control what I take in note of, what I can control and what I can't, and focus on those things.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart.
And get good at those things.
I think it's a good life lesson too.
I hope so.
I mean, like, you can only control so much ever in your life. You know? But like, once you start focusing down on them, then things will start to kind of change and get better. At least you feel good about them.
Yeah, that's what I think. One last question before we close out. This has been great.
Yeah, this has been great.
By the way, I hope you've been.
I've had a blast. This is awesome.
Fantastic, man. So we're just to come full circle. We're talking again about the idea of post society. Mm-hmm. Thoughts on the futuristic post society. Like, and the only reason I'm asking this is because I've decided I'm getting into anime this year.
Oh, okay.
I've decided this is going to be the year, and I watched Akira for the first time. So that takes place in World War III, after World War III.
Like dystopian.
Yeah.
With Blade Runner style.
Yeah, you're the Blade Runner kind of future.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're like it's so interesting to me to think of like all the sci-fi things that are real. Mm-hmm. Like FaceTime, I think is such an old sci-fi concept of communicating via TV screens.
Yeah, I still remember the first time I saw the Lisa's wedding episode of The Simpsons.
Oh, right.
When they had picture phone.
Picture phone, right, right. Yeah, no, all those weird, and Star Trek communicators. Like those are basically
That was the Nextel.
right. The next time, remember that?
I sure do.
But like all these things that I think communication is always the way forward for technology. Like we want to be able to communicate and talk to people and say things and all these, but
because as we get further apart, there's a part of our DNA that wants to be breaking bread around the fire.
yeah, like I don't fear the dystopian sci-fi future. I think it's good. I think like we're more connected around the world than we've ever been. I think it makes it scarier because now we get. I think the scariest thing about that idea, and as we pull the net closer and closer and closer around the world about how close we are to each other, to people that are literally on the other side of the globe.
Yes.
I think the thing that makes it very scary is we now know bad news immediately. And I feel like there used to be sort of a longer time period of like.
There used to be a break in between bad news.
Right, because we wouldn't get it. Like we just wouldn't hear about it. And now it's like I think we have to find a way to wrangle the overwhelmingness of knowing that like if something bad happens here, something bad could be happening there, and we might get that news crashing into one another at the same exact time. I think that's the scariest thing about it is like we now there's nowhere to hide from that.
Yeah.
But I think it's like sort of cool. I'm into it. I want it all. I want all the cool things.
No, me too. There's a certain exciting fear to it.
Yeah, put me on a hard drive. I want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, to be able to like exist in like virtual reality.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty crazy.
I know. I'm like sort of into it.
No, me too, man. Thanks for talking to me, Chris.
Oh, thanks for having me, dude. This is great.
Dude, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, folks, that's our show. Thank you for listening. Go to my website, willcareyisfunny.com. That's Carey is funny.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Comic Will Carey. I'll keep you posted on my upcoming stand-up shows, and I will have links for Chris's social media in the description. If you want to subscribe to the show, rate it on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it. And have a good New Year, folks. 2017 is going to be a bit of it'll be a challenge. You may have heard me and Chris talk about the election a little bit. We're just about 9 days away from the inauguration. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that the way we're going to get through it, if this is not the president you wanted, is to be together. I'm going to do my best. I'll fail, but I will try again. So, thank you for listening. I will see you next week between awesome and disaster. Take care, everyone.